Hello everyone and welcome back to Assassins Creed Valhalla with me, longclawvalhalla, where we always deliver. In this video we're going to be heading to Hamtunscire, the very last Saxon stronghold and the remaining standpoint of King Alfred the Great king of the Saxons in the Viking era. The entire story arcs have all been about pacifying England, and this has been all about King Alfred's attempt to keep his precious Christianity at the forefront of his ruling power. And of course, the Vikings, with their pagan worshipping their own gods, spreading themselves across England, wiping out kingdoms as they go. We've seen puppet kings installed onto thrones as a result of our Viking intervention, and we've seen Saxon kings overthrown and taken from their castles and killed. And remember, the Vikings, whilst hugely violent and oppressive, their main goal has always been about finding a more rich and fertile land that they could reap and sow and settle in. We've seen King Alfred a few times in the earlier story arcs, but now it's a chance to face off with him directly. Let's get to the conclusion. So first off, it's all about meeting up with your allies, our remaining allies from throughout the different kingdoms in England. We've been putting the work in every single region, and all the different kingdoms have come together, and there's a lot of Viking allies as well as some of your Saxon allies as well. We're going to draw on all of that influence we've created in all those relationships and use them to help fight King Alfred's sources. We're going to meet up with Earl Guthrum and Soma from our early story arcs, and as well as Hunwald and Eric and Stowe and some of our more recent story arc contacts as well. And these forces will come together all in Hamtunscire to mass one great attack on the Saxons, and this is going to be epic. This is all taking place in Chippenham, and the first thing we need to do is head with Earl Guthrum to a local blockade which you're going to need to release. That's one of the huge chains that blocks the river. There's also some Vikings that have been taken captive and you're going to free them. I should say that this is a story arc that has a suggested power of 340 and I'm currently around 211, and that's because I haven't completed some of the side missions and I haven't completed all of the Order of the Ancient kills yet. And you can rank up, but this is possible to do. It's just a little harder because the enemies you're fighting are way overpowered. Next up, you're going to head back and regroup with all of your allies, and let's see who's come to play. You can interact with each of the little groups that are congregated on the beach separately, and it's nice just to catch up and see everybody come together. And some of these groups are now mixed together, which is also very cool. There's a mixture of your Saxon allies, even some of the Christians have shown up, and it just shows that King Alfred's influence does not run smoothly throughout the country. His ideal of a purely Christianic country is not a realistic one. When you've done interacting with each of the groups separately, head up onto the hill and you can have your little moment where you give your little Braveheart speech, and it's all about preparing your troops for battle. This feels very different to some of the previous story arcs where we're about to siege into a fortress, as this is simply a town and I've no idea what to expect. If you're ready, you can launch your speech now, or you have time to run around and pick up supplies, and I would suggest making sure you are fully equipped with as much rations as you can and the full amount of arrows and things like that, because you're going to need every bit of energy you've got. Remember, this is almost the end of our story arc campaign. We've come so far to get to this point, and there is only a little bit further to go. Once you begin this mission, put your hood up and head directly for the church, and you'll be able to sneak all the way in. And when you get to the church, you find that Alfred is nowhere to be seen, and of course instead his reeve Goodwin has shown up in his place. Now, Goodwin has been a character that we've interacted with a couple of times, and I didn't really expect to have a boss fight with Alfred at this stage, and I'm not surprised that Goodwin is there as his patsy. After a few salty words, it's clear that this is not going to be easy. Now, hands down, this has been the hardest boss fight for me out of all of them, and the reason for that is that it's level 340 and I'm level 211 or something like that, so you're going to need to use all your skills. Like every boss fight, there is a pattern, and every fighter that fights with a large shield and a long weapon kind of fights the same. Goodwin is no different. He has some massive strikes, he hits incredibly hard, but you need to rely on your ability to dodge and dodge right, and that will give you the vital moments you need to hit him with some heavy attacks, and that is going to be your approach. This is not a fair fight. Goodwin uses every trick in the book. He throws horrible little bombs at you, and smoke bombs as well, and will do everything in his power to take you down. He is desperately trying to kill you, and this is going to be hard if you're not good and proficient at the combat mode. Eventually, once you bring him to his knees, you can then get to the final cutscene. And here you see Goodwin basically giving up, and you have the chance to choose whether he should live or die. And there's no real benefit to making this choice, so feel free to make this in any way you like. And I chose to kill the squirmy little rat because of every little bomb that he just threw at me, and every time he lit that flaming sword and slammed it into me. So there was no way I was going to let this guy live, and it sends a very strong message to Alfred that we are not going to lay down and let him ride over us. And that is your main boss fight for this mission. When you head outside, you get a fantastic scene with Soma, and this is very reminiscent of lots of the footage that you get to see in action movies. One warrior standing alone, surrounded by countless enemies, and there's no way that Ava can get to her in time, and you just know what's going to happen. Soma has been a massive character in the story arcs. You met her in Grant Bridge and helped her take control, and I've always liked her, and this is incredibly sad to see her being wounded and eventually killed, and Eivor has nothing he can do. This is a moment that causes Eivor to stumble visibly, but he has to keep his mind focused on the job, and as a character here, you're literally thrown into the lion's mouth. As soon as you're out of that scene, you have 3 missions that are slammed on screen all at once, and focus on them one by one. Head into the Longhouse and meet with El Guntram, and there's a reeve, a local nobleman who's locked himself up at the back of the room. Climb up and over, and there are 2 warriors on the floor that you need to take out, and if you're used to fighting any of these skirmishers, you'll know that you need to take them out from an aerial. You need to assassinate them as quickly as possible. Then head back out, picking up all of the rations and everything you can, and head and join up with Lufana, and she explains that the 2 Saxon allies, Hunwald in particular, has been grievously injured. You take him, carry him into the local farmhouse, and here you get another scene, and Eivor watches him make his last breath. Again, this is seriously, visibly affecting Eivor, and literally you visibly see him stumble as he walks out of the building. And there's one more you need to focus on. Grieber is trying to take the garrison, which is on the east side of the village. Head over and into the garrison via the gap in the fence on the left hand side and blow open the gates by standing on the tent, and then get some distance. Take out the archers that are firing from the catapults and the arbalists. These are the ones that are doing the most damage. There is a huge number of archers firing at you here, and you need to focus on taking out the ones that can deal the most damage, and keep moving around and dodging so the archers can't get a clean shot at you. And if you find yourself running out of rations and you're low on health, then don't be afraid to run around back into the town and pick up the rations that you can find there on tables and things like that, and then come back and take out the remaining enemies. And when you get little arrows above their head, you know you're gradually winning. Once you've done this, you'll need to regroup with your allies, and that's the majority of the work done. Take out the remaining Saxons that are in the town. The last of your allies are making a serious stand, and eventually you will defeat the Saxons, and that is this battle over. But not quite. Here now, after seeing some of your allies perish, it's all about putting them to rest in the right way. When you break the news to Guthrum, it seriously affects him, and if you know anything about Vikings, you'll understand that death is as important, if not more important, than life, and doing death properly and dying properly is all a Viking cares about. So now we need to focus our attention on sending our warrior friends to the afterlife, to Valhalla, and we do that in a very moving scene. Hjor, Lufrana's husband, has died, Soma has died, and of course Hunwald. These are three of our allies, three of the friends that we made, and those people that helped us build our forces. And this is a moving scene, and you can see that Eivor and Guthrum are both affected. Once we've said goodbye to our friends, it's time to catch up with Guthrum. And there's one more interaction in the town. And if you know again anything about the Viking stories and the most famous Vikings, Earl Guthrum was one of the most famous Vikings, and his story is one of the most epic. He was the Earl that conceded and agreed to be baptized into a Christian faith, and he has already sworn fealty to King Alfred on a silver sword, and he feels that his oath to Alfred is perhaps the reason why he wasn't able to become super victorious. And he's starting to challenge his own beliefs and consider that the Christian faith and the faith of Jesus Christ may be something he wants to explore, and he is essentially deciding that he will no longer take Alfred on, and there will be no follow-up, and this is as far as we can go. And now we have taken the entire country, and every kingdom has fallen, but King Alfred remains, and while he does, there is no supreme victory. For Eivor, he needs to head back to Ravensthorpe. Remember Swanborough, Hunwald's paramour? He needs to break the news to her that her brave Hunwald has died in battle, and died a hero too. And then there's nothing left to do but to report to Randy. As I said, we've come to the end of the whole pacifying England story. There is one more mission where we'll get to encounter Alfred and get our closure, but to do that you need to complete the